So it is Tuesday, 27th of December. So it is about 10 days since we came back. Had some time to reflect on the journey itself and all the comments that I've received from the videos. So thanks to everybody who's made comments, good, bad, or indifferent. But I have some numbers which you might find interesting. So the trip, which I'll remind you, was from Inverness, where I live, to Kenilworth, where we had a family event, and then from Kenilworth back. We set off in snow and low temperatures. Lowest temperature we got was -10, so on the way down. And on the way back, lowest temperature I think was a +2. So it was very, very cold, and that affected the performance of the battery. So the total journey was 960 miles. We did 10 charges, so that was 3 on the way down. That's not including the full charges before we left. We did 3 while we were in Kenilworth, so we did one. I did one small charge, which wasn't very good. I did one half charge before we had our family event, and I did the second half charge before we set off on Sunday morning. And then the rest were on the journey back up again. We put in a total of 295 kilowatts at a total spend of £175.22. The equivalent journey by my diesel car last September, which diesel was about £1.85 a litre at that point, and actually went slightly further, did a few more miles, but we spent just over £200 on diesel. So this marginally cheaper than diesel, although on that trip we did do probably another 200 miles on top of this particular one. So I think actually when you argue it out, it comes about parity. I also did a comparison on petrol at £1.54 a litre, and it would have worked out about £169.54. So a little bit cheaper than the electric. And of course the other thing is that while the diesel might have been slightly more money, arguable, it was 4 hours quicker. So we didn't have to stop and go through the stress that we went through. It was also on that journey we listened to podcasts, listened to stories, listened to music, had lots of chats, stopped me 1 or 2 for coffee. With the i4 on that trip, we did nothing but talk about range, charging, and getting ready for charging. And reflecting back now, I'm a bit calmer, but it was the most stressful journey I've done, to the point that I haven't been in the car since. So reflecting on all the comments we've had, I think there are 3 problems with EVs that nobody is talking about. Certainly not anybody I come across on YouTube. Most of those have got a vested interest in pushing EVs as the answer to all our problems. But there are 3 fundamental issues which makes me say that other than if you are only home charging and maybe doing one long journey a year, these cars are wholly unsuitable to UK roads and UK travel. So problem number 1 is the range. So the BMW has one of the longest quoted ranges at 340 miles, and was one of the reasons I picked the i4. But it's misleading, that, because you're never doing 100% of battery. In fact, the majority of the time you're only ever doing charged up to 80%, and if all the guides there, you charge between 20% and 80%. So you only actually have, according to all the official advice, 60% of your battery for practical use. It doesn't matter what the weather is. Between 20 and 80%, which takes the range down from 340 miles to about 204 miles. And that's before you allow for any exaggeration, any weather conditions or anything else that's going on. And yes, you can charge to 100%, but as soon as you get into that public charging network, probably as long as you're going to do is 80. Because beyond that, we all know if you've got an EV, it takes longer to charge anyway. The charging rate slows down. So the practical range, when you then add in road conditions, weather conditions, exaggeration, you're coming down to a practical range between charges of about 150 miles before you can be in trouble. And to put that buffer in, you're then down to about 120 miles to have buffer to go charger broken, charger full, or whatever the reason is you've got to move on. So that's the first problem. It means then you can't avoid the public charging network on any journey longer than 120 miles. Which brings me on to problem number 2, which is the infrastructure. Now, if you use something like ZapMap, there are a few apps around which will collectively show you all the charging points. If you do some filtering though, and let's say filter number 1 is you only want 50 kilowatt chargers and above, because below that you're wasting your time. You'll watch the number drop down significantly. Then you add in, there's over 60 providers, and lots of those providers actually don't allow access to the public because they're in golf clubs or motor dealers or other things where they are exclusive to people who belong to that organisation. That then reduces down again how many chargers are actually available to you as a member of the public on a longer trip. Factor in as well, if you've got a 50 kilowatt charger and there's 2 people on it, you've no longer got 50 kilowatts going into your car, you've only got 22 kilowatts going into your car. And if you're trying to charge up 60% of your battery because you've actually run down to 20% and you want to get to the 80, that's going to take you a long time. Probably longer than the service station's going to let you sit there. So you may not be getting anywhere near, you're only doing 20%, 30% charges, which means you're then bunny hopping between charging points, because now your 120 miles of range is down to 60 miles of range. And you might shout at me at that one, but we actually managed to get on a 22 kilowatts going in enough to cover 30 miles, and that got us to the next charger. So that is actually based on an example. The other problem with the infrastructure is where it is. It's in motorway service stations, or similar to where a petrol station, specially built centres, which is fine if it's just you as a couple or you on your own. You can go and sit and have more coffee. If you think about our journey, when it was a long journey, it took us 4 hours extra. It's 4 hours sitting around. There's only so much coffee you want to drink. There's only so much time you can spend in a motorway service station. And if you have kids, or like us, you've got dogs, we have 2 dogs, there's nowhere to walk the dogs. You can't go, you can't do anything. But you're in places where dogs can't go in service stations. They don't let them in. I don't know why, but they don't. So you're kind of stuck there in your car because where these things are, no one's thought about this ideal of go off and do something nice while you charge. It's utter rubbish. You don't. So let's come on to problem number 3, which is the demand, which is the sale of EVs is far outstripping the improvement in the infrastructure. And even though the infrastructure is improving, and you can see plenty of things being built, it is not being built at the same rate that the cars are being pumped out. Car dealerships are pushing these things because this is the future. So this is only going to make the problem worse. They can't build these things fast enough to meet the demand that's coming. We were driving on a quiet Sunday in December. So to put it in perspective, from south of Birmingham to Scotland, Gretna Green, we drove the M6, no traffic jams, not a single slowdown. What's it going to be like in July? Or school holidays, or Easter? What's it going to be like then? When people are queuing to get in service stations? I'll let you think about that. but the infrastructure just isn't there, and the demand is way outstripping any growth is going to be. And no one's talking about this. If they do, they minimise it down. You might have to wait. I watched lots of videos where there was some queues. If you go from last year to next year, 2023, there's another 100,000 of these cars on the road. Well, maybe another 1,000 chargers. It's a tenfold difference. So my belief is we're not ready. I believe that actually there's a fairly good con going on that says we are when we absolutely aren't. By saying ranges of 340 rather than you've only really got 60% of the battery. By saying there's an infrastructure when there isn't an infrastructure. And the biggest lie of all, that it's cheaper. It may be cheaper if you're just charging from home, but that's debatable right now. With the price of electric compared to the price of petrol, which is now around here £1.30 for a litre. There's a debate about, I think the differential has closed out quite a lot. You add on how much you pay extra for an EV, and the fact we are all going to be paying road tax on these EVs. The price differential is narrower. But once you're out there in that public network, it is more expensive to charge your car with electricity than it is to fill it full of diesel. And certainly compared to petrol, petrol's a lot cheaper. The added advantage is with the ICE cars, you haven't got to stop for 4 hours extra to charge your car. So what's the solution? I say we're not ready, so is it gloomy, don't buy them? I'd say don't buy them yet. I think the solution actually is not in the infrastructure. I think the solution is in battery technology, and that is coming, that is getting better. But we need to make these cars practical across a range of drivers rather than just those who are using them as effectively glorified shopping trolleys. For them to be practical, they need a practical range of 300 to 400 miles, not 120 miles. Because that way then you don't have to use the public charger network. And that way then you can just charge at home. It probably is going to be cheaper. And we have the added benefit, as we all want to do, is protect the environment. So what's happening with me then? Well, it's simple. My car is going. I had a conversation with BMW. They have worked me out a deal. It is not the best deal in the world. It's very expensive to trade in a car that's only a couple of months old. But the EV does not suit our needs. I have a long trip to do in January, I have another one to do in February. They're just not practical in the UK with the charging network that we have. It just don't work. So, Thursday, 29th, the EV goes, and I'm going to get a BMW 5 Series PHEV instead. So we've then got a bit of electric and the petrol backup. I imagine a few will disagree, but I'm doing what is our needs. The financial loss is very painful. But I cannot do another journey like that again. And I'm not going to have a £60,000 car that I can only use in the summer or for short journeys. So we've cut our losses painfully. And so my output of videos on i4 is about to come to a stop. But this is what I think. We're not ready for these to be a practical all-round car. We're just not. And there's plenty of people who tell you that there are. But you have to think about, so what's their interest? It is coming. It will get better. Maybe then in 3 years, I'll go back. Thanks for watching. Take care.